Today, I'm sitting with Joseph. Joseph, what do you do on a day-to-day basis?
Wow, on a day-to-day basis. Well, let's see. I have a 14-year-old son, first of all, so often enough he takes up some of my time. I host a podcast focused on Satanism, and I lead a congregation of about 400 Satanists. And between that group and the podcast, that is pretty much a full-time job. And I also maintain a small business on the side.
Okay, what's your small business on the side?
I have a letterpress printed stationery business. So basically, I have a giant 100-year-old printing press in my garage,
Ooh,
and I print stationery with it, mostly greeting cards and postcards.
that's super cool. Like, how much does that cost? I imagine you'd make pretty good money.
Uh, there are people that do it that make pretty good money,
Yeah.
and there are ways to make pretty good money doing it. I am not one of those people, and the ways that you can make pretty good money doing it, I don't like to do. So,
Uh-huh.
um, that's the thing. A big deal for me is the idea that I don't wanna do anything that I don't want to do,
Yes, very true.
and so it costs me a lot of money, but
Mhm.
that's the way I just have to do it.
So what do you do? Like, give me the rundown. This is fast. Like, I'm thinking like you got Benjamin Franklin down there making newspapers. What do you do?
As far as the letterpress printing,
Yeah.
well, I start with a design. It can be a sketch or a piece of like vintage stock art or something like that. And, I create the design digitally on my computer. I usually use Adobe Illustrator. And
Hmm.
then I send that to some folks in New York, I think, or the other guy, I forget where they're at. The one company was in New York, but I send it to these other guys who make a custom photopolymer plate of it, which is a flexible plastic plate, basically, with my design sort of engraved on it. And so they ship me that plate, and then I use that plate in my big old letterpress to create the impressions on the paper. And then the cards get printed, cut down, scored and folded and packed with an envelope into a little plastic sleeve. And then I sell them mostly wholesale to shops around the world that sell them to their customers. And I also sell them through Amazon and stuff like that.
Yeah, give me one second. That's super cool. How did you get into doing that?
Well, I was really into doing fine art printmaking through like the 2000s, I guess I would say, starting around 2001. And I was doing all different forms of printmaking as, I don't know, just as a sort of independent pursuit, just a hobby maybe. And I was doing some art shows and things like that. And a good friend of mine who was also a printmaker had a little letterpress out for a demonstration at one of her shows. And I'd never used one before. But when I did, I just became more interested in it. And I just kept pursuing that a bit. And I got a small tabletop letterpress myself and just started making some cards and small designs. And I don't know, it just sort of blossomed from there, and I fell into a business with it. Um,
Hmm.
it just sort of grew out of the hobby and became a business, and I've been doing that since around 2012, I want to say.
That's cool. That's cool. So how does that link to Satanism? Because I feel like those are to a naked ear, that sounds pretty opposite. You wouldn't imagine Satanists, making cute little cards for grandma.
Yeah, mine weren't so much cute little cards for grandma, but yeah, there isn't much of a connection between that and Satanism, really.
Uh-huh.
Um, I just it happened to be the thing. But within Satanism, at least in my experience, so many of my peers in Satanism, we do have a lot of creative people that do a lot of
Yeah.
different creative things. So that part sort of makes sense to me. Yeah.
Where did where did where did this where this where did when did you start become a Satanist? But what was your childhood like? How was the lead up to? Because I think it's cool. I'm fascinated. I'm open to all ideas. I'm just trying to put myself in the shoes of someone who's very, you know, closed-minded, and when they hear the word Satanist, they imagine the worst possible outcome. So what led you to that?
What led me to it? Well, I should say my first exposure to the idea of Satanism actually being a thing was when I was a teenager in the 90s. I stumbled upon the Satanic Bible by Anton LaVey. In the late 60s, he founded an organization called Church of Satan, and they were sort of the first modern Satanists. That's sort of a
Mhm.
term we use, modern Satanism. And he was the first, and he ran the Church of Satan. That is still an organization that exists today. Anton is no longer with us. He passed away a while back. Um, and so, yeah, as a kid, I was the, outsider kid. I had the long hair down to my ass, and I was just, I don't know, a rebellious outsider type kid. And when I found that Satanic Bible, it just really grabbed my attention, and I wanted to get into it as soon as I could. So I just got it and started reading and all of that. Um, and it just came from the rebellious nature that I had fallen into. I don't know if something like that is biology or just my environment or whatever it is.
Mhm.
But I was that kid, and I had a mom who sort of nurtured that spirit, sort of the rebellious spirit, and I just went with it. So that was my first exposure to it, and I did identify as a Satanist back then once I found that. But as the years went by, it didn't take too long before I sort of grew out of or away from the ideals that were presented in that Satanic Bible. There were parts of it that sounded good to me and I liked, but there were other parts that, didn't really work for me so much.
What
And
were the parts
that I didn't like.
just that you did like and didn't like? Sorry to
Um
interrupt you.
no, well, some of it, some of the stuff that I do like from the Church of Satan is just the general idea. Anton, again, the founder of that, he would write about indulgence over abstinence, allowing us to indulge in the pleasures of life and
Mhm.
things that are considered sinful by people on the other side, people that really adhere to Christianity and things like that. Um, and I liked that idea. I liked the idea that we don't need to feel ashamed of these things that are very much human nature,
Mhm.
and there's no malice involved, there's no ill will, there's no harm, there's nothing mean spirited or anything like that, and they are human nature, and it's almost just a built-in way for Christianity to instill guilt and shame in people as a method of control.
Mhm.
And so I really loved that idea, and I still appreciate that idea very much. But there were other parts of the Church of Satan and Anton's writings that I didn't like, which are things like elitism. Anton's, that organization's thing is very built on elitism and the idea of social Darwinism and all kinds of things like that, and lots of just, I don't know, silly ideas that just, once I really, matured a little bit and focused a little more on what I was reading and how I was understanding it, it just wasn't really a good fit for me anymore. And so many years later, in 2013, a new organization sprung up called the Satanic Temple. And shortly after, somewhere in the couple of years after that, they they came onto my radar, and I felt much more aligned with the ideals that they set forth. And so I am a member of the Satanic Temple, and that is more the flavor of Satanism that I adhere to and pursue with my group and all the
Mhm.
things that we do.
So in I'm only trying to be, I guess, funny. I'm not trying to make fun of anyone when I say this. It's like, so what do you do in the temple? When's the next ritual, right? Because that's what everyone that is closed mind is thinking right now. It's like, oh, these guys, they burn cats and rape bunnies, but do you do that? Or what's inside the temple?
Okay, there's a lot there. There's a lot to unpack. So,
Yeah.
first of all, the Satanic Temple, that is the name of the organization.
Hmm.
And they do have a headquarters in Salem, Massachusetts. However, there is no actual temple in the
Yeah.
traditional way that you might think of it, the way like Mormons go to temple. We don't have a physical temple that we go to. And speaking just for myself and my group, the only reason we don't have a place like that is because we just can't afford one right now. But the moment we're able to get one, I would desperately love to have one. And we
Hmm.
talk about it and joke around about it all the time. But boy, do I really want to get us a great headquarters. And as far as the cats and rabbits and rituals, tons of us, not me, I'm not a cat guy, I've got a couple of dogs,
Yeah.
but so many of our members have cats. We do weekly Zoom chats with each other, and we see each other that way very often. And it seems like almost everyone has a cat or two or three. So, no, I think everybody would be very upset if any of us actually harmed a cat. And as for rituals, we certainly do have rituals. Some members are more interested in rituals than others. Um, there's nothing there's nothing about our religion that requires ritual, and we don't really have anything in the way of standard preset rituals that anyone needs to perform. For us, rituals are designed to serve whatever specific purpose we want them to serve. And I guess just as some background, it's worth noting that our Satanism, and when I use that term modern Satanism, the one most obvious thing that the Church of Satan and the Satanic Temple have in common is that none of us believe in Satan. There is no
Yes.
Satan, there is no
Yes.
God. We are atheists. We use Satan as a symbol, a metaphor. We do not believe in any of that stuff. So when we do rituals, we are not praying to Satan. We're not worshiping Satan. We're not, we don't believe in any supernatural anything. We're not expecting anything to levitate or anything. Um, they're designed to bring about a state of mind that is beneficial to the person practicing it. Um,
So it's almost as a form of Buddhism, you could argue.
Well, a form of meditation would be
Yeah.
fair.
Hmm.
Sometimes, and again, like I said, there are no rules when it comes to our ritual practice. So an individual can create a ritual that they practice by themselves. They can do it every day. They can do it once a month. They can do it once a year. They can do it however and whenever they want to accomplish whatever specific goal for them that they've created it to serve.
Hmm.
If you're feeling bad about something and you want something to help you make you feel better, that can be a ritual. And then we have group rituals that sometimes people participate in, and it's just sort of a group version of the same thing. It's we have a ritual that's designed to bring about whatever specific outcome that we'd like it to serve. And it has everything to do with state of mind and nothing to do with supernatural magic.
Hmm. It's you're almost manifesting, right? And using intuition. Um,
Yeah, it's just the power of the mind.
yeah. So why? why Satan though? Like, it's not a very good welcoming mat to put in front of your temple, you know. There's so much. I mean, do I have to even go into why there's so much stigma
Of course.
about
Yeah, well,
Satan?
there's, it's I wonder if people, like the way you just mentioned that, it
Yeah.
sounds like it's so obvious, right? Like everybody knows. But I think people don't really know. And
Uh-huh.
here's what I mean. I think the answer that you suspect
Yeah.
is that obviously, because Christianity is such a dominant force in, at least in America where I live,
Yeah.
um, and Satan is, of course, the enemy, right? He's the bad guy in that story, I guess, to some people.
Yeah.
And he represents the opposite of what Jesus or God represents, and they are supposed to represent all that is good, and therefore the enemy and the opposite of that is everything that is bad and evil. And I think that's true for a lot of people. That is where the idea comes from. But for a lot, even maybe more people, I think the idea of what Satan is and what he represents has been perpetuated by pop culture. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's been perpetuated by all the silly movies that, so many of us love to watch. People are possessed. There's The Exorcist, it's Rosemary's Baby, it's The Omen. It's all of these things that started from, back in the 70s, the late 60s and into the 70s and all the way up through today. A popular, what is it, The Conjuring or one of those movies came out just this year, and it was The Devil Made Me Do It. And it was a story of, satanic, demonic possession. And I think more people have watched scary movies than have read the Bible and assumed that it was true. I think your average friend that you might have who's anywhere between, 15 and 30 years old, I think the odds of them sitting down and reading the Bible cover to cover is a lot less than the odds of them having watched a handful of horror movies or something where they present this idea of Satan or evil or demons or something.
Yeah.
And so, in amongst ourselves in modern Satanism, so often we reference a thing that we call the satanic panic. And we usually look to the 80s and the 90s as a sort of peak of the satanic panic. And that was a time when, it's a long story. We could talk about that forever, but that was a time when a lot of stories and books and different things were entering into the pop culture mainstream that were painting that picture of this idea of evil. There are Satanists out there. They are evil. They're in cults and they're doing terrible, evil things. They're committing crimes and all of these horrific ideas combined with all the pop culture stuff that I mentioned, the movies and all of that. All of that stuff was really peaking at that time and getting a lot of mainstream attention on the news. And Geraldo Rivera famously did, TV specials about this stuff, and other daytime talk shows did the same. And it was just a time when that was very popular, and it was planting that seed for all your average people across America to turn on their TV and hear these stories of the evil doings of Satan and his followers. Of course, we know now, looking back, all of those stories were fake. There was no real basis. There never
Yeah.
was any evidence for these things, but it made for good TV. And even today, as we sit here now, we have things like QAnon, which is just an extension of the Satanic Panic. They believe in outrageous, ridiculous tales of you know, the Hollywood and political elites worshiping Satan, and they're eating children, and just all these crazy sounding horrific things, none of which are true, but there are enough people out there that actually believe they're true or want to believe they're true, for whatever crazy reason that is. That part I don't have an answer for, but
Yeah.
but it still exists. And of course, none of it is true. All of it is wildly outlandish. It's just none of it is even believable to a rational person.
Hmm.
Um, but so that's where the feeling about Satanism comes from. All of those different things, and of course, it all does go back to the Bible, or not even just the Bible, but just the tales that spring from the Bible and from Christianity. Um, so why Satan was your basic question, right?
Hmm.
Like if you know it's evil, or that it's perceived as evil, why would you do that? And I mentioned I host a podcast, and I just recently did a whole episode where I went into lengthy detail about, personally for me, why Satan. But generally speaking, the people who founded the Satanic Temple, they're of an age, I believe, similar to me. I'm 43 years old. And so I grew up and had, many of my formative years take place during the height of this satanic panic. And, so I was witness to all of that. And luckily I had the kind of upbringing, and it's specifically my mother, who, she did not fall prey to that kind of thinking. She was rebellious and open-minded and all of that. And so that spirit stuck with me. And part of that meant critical thinking and asking questions and looking for answers and science and things like that. And so I never really had religion, traditional religions, as a big part of my life. So I never had to worry too much about fighting that off. Um, but what Satan means to me on the most basic level, and what I believe it means to the men who founded the Satanic Temple, um, is that Satan is a symbol. It represents the eternal rebel in opposition to arbitrary authority. And because our religion is a religion first and foremost, which is a part of the discussion we can have, what makes a religion a religion. But another big part of what the Satanic Temple has always done is they're very heavily involved in political activism, and the separation of church and state, certainly early on in their existence, was a big part of their priorities. Um, and so, because Christianity is such a dominant force in the United States, and specifically within the political system where it specifically doesn't belong, right?
Hmm.
We're supposed to have a separation of church and state. But of course, in America, we have no such separation. And um, and we disagree with that. We think there should be a separation. And I didn't mention it early on, and I don't know if it's that important here, but I should just say that, I'm talking about the Satanic Temple and I'm referencing their founders and all of that. And maybe this is obvious, but I just want to make it clear that in no way do I represent the Satanic Temple.
Hmm.
I'm just a member, and there are thousands and thousands of members all across the country and in the world. And so I'm just another one of those. I'm just a member. I align with the core ideology of that group, but I do not represent the Satanic Temple, and I don't speak on their behalf. I do represent a a specific congregation of members called Satanic Delco, and we're a few hundred people. Um, but again, we are aligned to the same core ideology of the Satanic Temple. But yeah, the simplest answer is Satan is a symbol for
Yeah.
us. It represents that, again, the eternal rebel. That's the way we often refer to it. The eternal rebel in opposition to arbitrary authority.
Yeah, I really like that. That's really cool. If you want to be on, if you want me to be clean honest, I think that's some badass shit right there. Honestly, you
Yeah.
took such a such a core thing about the human experience, which is religion and good and evil, but we define what's good and evil on our own terms. And I think I mentioned that because a lot of people define their own good and evil based on someone else's definition of good and evil, which is, Christianity and the Bible. Um, but it's never black and white. Who knows if God is a truly good person or if Satan's a truly bad person, if you want to take it to the Christian level. Who knows?
Yeah.
It's up for you to decide. And so I let me ask you this. And like I said, I only say this as a joke, you know. So do you just like hate Christians, right? Do you just want to never talk to them ever?
um, no, no.
Hmm.
It's, it's weird. There are times I've actually been considering this a bit, and I'm going to flesh it out sometime soon in a podcast episode just to sort of reconcile it in my own mind. Um, but there are moments when you can take any given subject or circumstance in your life. You can take it more seriously or less seriously, right? Maybe you have a grandmom who is 90 years old, and she's an older lady, and she's stuck in her ways, and she has some very unfortunate views that come from being more common in decades past. Maybe grandmom's a little casually racist, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe grandmom, whatever, that's a common example. Just things like that. Ideas, unfortunate ideas that were more common in times past that we've socially evolved away from over time. Now, you can take grandmom's values and feelings about things more or less seriously. If you want to take it real seriously, well, maybe you hate your grandmom. Maybe you think, grandmom, you're a racist, close minded bitch, and I don't want to involve myself with a person like you because that's disgusting. Or you can be like, well, it's grandmom. She's my grandmom. She's 90 years old. What are you going to do? I can't
Right.
convert my old grandmom. She can barely hear anymore. I just love my grandmom and I forgive it. And what are you going to do? And we all have moments like that for anything in life. We can't always be 100% cranked up, aggressive, ready to fight everything all the time. So I have Christian friends. I have friends that have been Christian that I've known my whole life. And many of us have had religious discussions or debates, and sometimes they can be heated or sometimes they're just pretty chill. As I get older, I find that they're more chill because we're older and we've all settled into who we are. We're not trying to change anyone. I don't expect to convert any of my Christian friends. They've been Christians for 40 years now.
Yeah.
They're probably not going to change their mind, and that's okay. They certainly know they're not going to change my mind, and we can put that aside and we can just hang out. We can just listen to Black Sabbath and be friends and, do whatever we want to do. And we don't need to care so much. But then there's moments when, for whatever reason, something happens, something's in the news, or, whatever, some subject comes up. Like right now, a hot topic amongst Satanists in particular is everything going on in the state of Texas. And Texas is a crazy place, man. And what they've most recently done is essentially banned abortion for pretty much everyone beyond 6 weeks of pregnancy. Now, I don't know how involved or knowledgeable you are about pregnancy or abortion or anything like that,
Hmm.
but 6 weeks pregnant is before many people even know they're pregnant.
Yeah.
Many women don't even realize they're pregnant yet by that point. And so the idea of them choosing to have an abortion or not isn't even on their radar. And it's very early on. Even if you do know, imagine you're a young woman or any aged woman, and you find out you're pregnant, and you're only 5 weeks pregnant. You're only 5 weeks. and it's a surprise to you, this was not planned, you've got a week to
Right.
make a really important, maybe life decision that might involve not only yourself, but a partner. You might be married or have a boyfriend or girlfriend, or maybe not. Maybe this was just, an accident that happened. And man, that's not a lot of time to make a big life decision. I've thought about what pair of shoes would I like to buy for longer than a week.
Right.
And the idea that, you know, after that point, you're banned from getting an abortion in Texas. And they make no exceptions for cases of rape or incest or anything like that. You're 18 years old, you're out of work, you're living at home, and your fucking crazy, insane, abusive asshole uncle has raped you
Yeah.
and you're pregnant. Tough shit, says the state of Texas.
Yeah, wow. No, when you put it like that, I'm not very into the news, so this is all somewhat pretty new. So it's like
Yes,
that's pretty fucked up, dude.
it's real fucked up. And these ideas, these aren't random, like legislative ideas that came up for no reason. All of these ideas are born of Christianity
Yeah.
and the idea that life is precious and life begins at the moment of conception, which is scientifically ridiculous. But according to Christianity, that's just the way. And because our nation is functionally a Christian nation, a Christian theocracy, some might say, um, they get to determine the rules in many cases, which again is completely against the ideas of how our nation was founded and the system that it's, the way the system is supposed to function with a complete separation of church and state. But inevitably, because Christianity is the dominant religion in this country, it bleeds into politics and therefore laws and rules and the way everybody is, sort of forced to live in many cases. And so the Satanic Temple, the idea, when I say that all of us align with the same ideology of the Satanic Temple, what that means specifically is that we align with the 7 fundamental tenets of the Satanic Temple. You're surely familiar with the idea of the 10 commandments, right?
Of course.
We have the 7 tenets, which
Mhm.
are just 7, short points basically that lay out the ideals, the moral code, if you will, that defines the Satanic Temple. And those are the things that we align with. And, we can talk about those if you want, but one of them is tenet number 3 is one's body is inviolable, subject to one's own will alone.
Yeah.
And that's the tenet that comes to everyone's mind first and foremost involving abortion. This is, we're referencing a woman's body. It is her body. We don't believe that a fetus that is 6 weeks into development, we don't believe that is an individual human being. And we believe it's the woman's choice. And so if a woman at 6 or 10 or 20 weeks of gestation, if that woman wants to have an abortion, we believe it is her right to do so. And we let science lead the way. Another one of those 7 tenets is number 5, which is beliefs should conform to one's best scientific understanding of the world. One should take care never to distort scientific facts to fit one's beliefs. And that's a big one for us. So we look to science, we look to doctors to tell us when is it safe to have an abortion? How is it safe to have an abortion? What methods are safe? How should this go? Use science. And that's what we use. And so when rules like this get passed in Texas, we are all over that shit and we don't like it and we want to do our best to push back against it.
Yeah, man. That I like that. No, that's all true. That's very interesting. I I'm just fascinated. My mind is being blown right now. So what are the seventh
Tenets. Yeah. Let's
tenets?
do you want to go through them a little bit?
Yeah, let's go through all of them. Give me the
Sure.
spiel.
Tenet number one is one should strive to act with compassion and empathy toward all creatures in accordance with reason.
Okay. So what does that mean to you?
Um, I mean, that may be, I don't know, I guess every tenet has room for interpretation to a point, and they mean slightly different things to different people, but strive to act with compassion and empathy. The way we amongst ourselves, we like to sort of simplify. We call these "don't be a dick." That's
Don't
how
be a
we
dick.
just don't be a dick. You
Yeah.
know, lead with compassion and empathy toward all creatures in accordance with reason. Reasonably, be compassionate, be empathetic. And it doesn't say people, it says all creatures. We're animal lovers. A stark contrast to the idea that you led with earlier on, and I know it's not your idea, but
Yeah.
there is that idea out there. Everybody says it. We joke all the time. You guys are sacrificing animals, you're eating babies, you're doing every wild, crazy, evil thing. But right there, the most important one, tenet number one, is act with compassion and empathy. And so that's what we like to remind ourselves to do whenever possible.
All right. What's the second one?
Number two is the struggle for justice is an ongoing and necessary pursuit that should prevail over laws and institutions.
Okay. That sounds pretty interesting.
Yeah, the struggle for justice, right? Justice is a
Uh-huh.
good thing to work toward. We can all agree. But the part at the end there that says it should prevail over laws and institutions. Now, that part gets a little hairy, right? It sounds like we're saying, I don't know, some people might interpret that to mean some form of lawlessness or something like that. We're ignoring laws. And it doesn't really mean that. But history tells us that there are times when the word of the law doesn't reflect the spirit of the law or the spirit of the people. And a real simple example I would use is something like civil rights.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of, Jim Crow
Uh,
laws.
yeah, there was a time in this country where laws and institutions told us that some people are not equal. Some people cannot vote. They're not, they're just not equal to other people. And that was a case where the people had to act, they had to pursue justice in the face of laws and institutions that didn't reflect the will of the people and the spirit of equality. And so that was a case where that had to happen, and that was proof that the struggle for justice is a necessary pursuit. And that is never ending. There's always work to be done. And it can take the form of civil rights. It can take the form of equal rights for LGBT people and women getting abortions and all the other things. Um, Ideally, we'd like things to just be a level playing field for everyone, as much as possible.
Yeah.
And number three, we mentioned that one is one's body is inviolable, subject to one's own will alone.
Hmm.
And that's a big one. The idea of bodily autonomy, we want to have that. Um,
Tattoos and piercings are a huge
of course.
part.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And of course it touches on, I guess it'd be an obvious one, but um, how could you apply it? Things like consent and sexual assault and things like that.
Yeah.
Just all of the ways that you might take for granted that someone's body is their own and it is not to be violated. They get to decide how their body is to be treated on their terms.
Yeah.
And so,
Even
yeah,
even like when you get some shitty food and you don't want to eat it, you know?
exactly. Yeah. So number 4 is a big one. The freedoms of others should be respected, including the freedom to offend. To
Okay.
willfully and unjustly encroach upon the freedoms of another is to forego one's own.
Okay.
Now, this is a
So,
tricky one, right?
uh, yeah.
Um, all of the tenets so far and beyond this one, we hear words like compassion, empathy, justice. They're all of these very simple, universal ideas that you could all, as soon as you see them, you can have a pretty good positive feeling about them. They're pretty easy to understand. And then this one comes along and says, we have the freedom to offend,
Yeah.
and it feels different than the other ones, because do you want to be offended? No, nobody
Yeah.
likes to be offended. Nobody, it's an uncomfortable feeling. It maybe is a little negative. But what this tenet is all about, and this one is the most debated tenet, I think,
Hmm.
when people that are new to Satanism or read these tenets for the first time, this is always the one that stands out that they have the most questions about. What does this mean, the freedom to offend? And I've done a bunch of thinking and research and talking through this one, and I've gone to the founders of the Satanic Temple to see specifically what their words have been about these tenets, because they are the authors of these tenets.
Yeah.
And this tenet is primarily all about essentially the basically the First Amendment to the Constitution. And that
Yeah.
First Amendment is freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of the press, all of that stuff. Those basic freedoms that are protected in that amendment to the Constitution. And so the idea of the freedom to offend. So as I sit here all this time, we're talking about Satanism and what that means to me and why I'm a Satanist. And I'm sure you can guess that there are countless millions of Christians out there who are deeply, very seriously offended by my very existence.
Yeah.
The fact that someone would be out there openly identifying with the opposition to all that they believe is good and holy in the world is deeply offensive to them. And that's what I'm here doing. And that's what every Satanist is doing. So when I wake up in the morning and exist, I am offensive to Christians.
Yeah.
And they have the right to feel that way. And I have the right to be me. And when a comedian tells a joke, whatever joke it might be about whatever topic he wants to talk about, some people are going to fall down laughing, and other people are going to be deeply offended.
Yeah.
And they're going to say, "You can't talk about that. You shouldn't say things like that." Well, whose opinion means more? The person who's offended or the person who thinks it's great? Neither of their opinion means more,
Yeah.
because we have freedom of speech in this country. And our government does not. This is my favorite thing about the United States government and the Supreme Court and the way that they have stuck to their guns in defending this part of the Constitution. It's the one thing I give them pretty good credit on, because ever since this amendment was written back in whatever year it was, I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was a long fucking time ago.
Yeah.
I think it's been about 230 years, I think.
Yeah.
So for the past 200 plus years, they've continually defended this amendment, and they've chosen never to define or limit hate speech what we call nowadays hate speech. The idea that there are certain words and things that you cannot say as according to the government, and that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Legally,
Well,
you can say any fucked up word you want to say.
yeah.
Now, that should you say them? That doesn't mean you should say them. A lot of words, if you say them, you're pretty much being an asshole. But if we give the government the ability to censor words, can we trust them to do the right thing with that power? And will they use it in a way that everyone agrees with?
Yeah, man. This is a great topic. I love it. It's like just to go back on everything you said, is like, one, I love that you said, I don't know the exact word you said, but that a Christian is not all, but a lot of Christians will be offended just by the fact of your mere existence. But in my opinion, the biggest problem with our country or with our society today is how we are unwilling to hear the other side, unwilling to
Yeah.
more like understand the other side. Because if you sit down and you talk to you and you hear everything you're saying, you don't worship Satan, right? You
Right.
don't worship Satan. And that is exactly what the Christians think you do, but you don't. But no one spends the time and listens and understands. And then the comedic point you brought up when it comes to freedom of speech is such a great point, because it's somewhat in the news right now. I don't know if you watched the new Dave Chappelle
Oh,
special on
yes.
Netflix, but
We are very aware of that one.
I love it because I don't remember if it was South Park or Louis C.K. I think it was one of those two, but they said that if you can't joke about one thing, then how can you joke about anything? And it's so true, because if I can't joke about, Satanism, then why do you get a joke about puppies? I
Well,
think you,
and here's the other side of that coin. So I talk about, I wake up in the morning and I'm offensive because I'm a Satanist,
yeah.
and I wear a shirt with an inverted cross on it, and whatever. And I say these things that are blasphemous, and Christians find it all deeply offensive. And a lot of that comes from what Satan and Satanism represents to them. And it represents all the things we talked about, evil and all these things. In almost every case, they're not real things. If Christians really knew or believed or understood what we were and what we care about and what we believe in, I think those feelings would be different, but that's okay. But on the other hand, we do know what Christianity is. We do know what the Catholic Church is. They stand out. And we do know some of the very, the real world things that Christianity and certainly Catholicism specifically represent. We know some of the horrific, unspeakable acts that have been committed in those organizations and covered up by those organizations, and that continue to this day.
Mhm.
Horrible, horrible abuses and crimes, including murder and financial crimes and abuse, you name it. Okay. So we can look at those behaviors. And once you learn about those things, now there really is an evil organization out there. And so if we allow ourselves, this is where I was kind of mentioning this earlier, the idea that you can choose to take things more or less seriously at times. This is one of those cases. We can just think, okay, yeah, they're Christians and we don't agree with them, but it's okay. Everybody has their freedom to their own religion, of course. We don't want to take that away. But knowing everything that I know about what really happens in those religions. Now, of course, I'm not speaking about everyone. There's millions of normal people that are Christians for whatever reason, and they're just living a regular life and they're trying to do a good job and they're fine.
Mhm.
But there's a lot of evil that goes on in those organizations, these abuses and these crimes, and it's terrible and sad. So if I allow myself to think about those things, something like Christianity or the Catholic Church or a lot of these different groups, they are deeply offensive to me. The
Mm.
idea that anyone would support and even give money to and put faith in an organization that has such a deep, long history of terrible abuses, That is wildly offensive to me. Um, you know, if you had a rapist, a child rapist living in your neighborhood, and you found out that your friends were giving money to this guy to help him support himself and prop himself up and buy himself a new car, how would you feel? That would feel weird, right?
Yeah, totally.
And that's what everyone is doing with the Catholic Church and other groups as well. And so they are deeply offensive to me. Um, but I don't make it my mission to eliminate Christianity or any other religion. We we strive for the idea of equal treatment, plurality, you know, freedom of religion. That same First Amendment that offers us free speech offers us freedom of religion and freedom from religion. So we're all free to express our own religion in our own ways and to not have religion forced on us by the government. That's what the First Amendment gives us. And so it's not our mission to hate Christians or get rid of Christians. But if you catch me and plenty of others on the right day in the right mood, we'll have significantly stronger feelings about what Christianity really represents on the ground level. And it's not nice.
Oh, no, I love it. That was great.
Yeah.
You are very articulate, very
Thanks.
intellectual. So what's the next tenet?
Let's see. Tenet number 5. That was 4, right? Number 5 was the science one. It is beliefs should conform to one's best scientific understanding of the world. One should take care never to distort scientific facts to fit one's beliefs.
Okay.
And that's one that, I mean, that one certainly speaks to uh, a way that we differ significantly from Christianity, right? We don't believe that an omnipotent being created all creatures and the earth in 6 days. We don't believe that. We don't believe that the earth is 6 or however many thousand years old that some Christians believe in, the new earth or young earth theory.
Hmm.
Um, we don't believe that humans and dinosaurs coexisted. There's no evidence of such a thing. It's ridiculous. We don't believe that 2 of every animal fit on the ark. We don't believe that walking on water is a thing. We don't believe a man can be born from a virgin. You name it. Any wild tale that Christianity espouses, we pretty much don't believe in that because we've figured out science. We've figured out the scientific method over the years. And we look to that to help us know what is real and what isn't. And there's one, my favorite answer, my favorite answer of all the answers that science provides us in the whole world is I don't know. That's a real answer that
Hmm.
science gives us for a lot of things. There are a lot of things that we don't know yet. And when science doesn't know the answer yet, what they tell us is, guys, we don't know. We don't know yet. We're working on it. We hope to figure it out one day. We're trying, but we just don't know. And that's a really great fucking answer because it's a true answer.
Yeah.
But when you ask enough questions, which is frowned upon in many religions, if you ask enough tough questions, you get to a point where their version of I don't know is, well, God works in mysterious ways.
Yeah.
There's never a true I don't know. It's just, well, God is the answer. You don't know how this works? God did it. God's doing it. God decided that your baby should die, um, just because we can't understand it, but it was God.
Hmm.
And I don't know, man. I'm just not that guy. I
Yeah.
just can't accept those answers. They don't ring true to me. It's empty. And so we believe in science, and we look to it for a greater understanding of our natural world.
Yeah. So with that, we'll get to the other tendons too. I want to hear them, but I got it since it's on the topic somewhat.
Sure.
It's a lot about what my podcast is about. Um, is I want more of just your personal beliefs instead of I don't know, right? Why do you think
Sure.
we exist? What is the point of consciousness? Because to me, I think it's crazy to believe that we just came from nothing, right? Not saying the Big Bang didn't happen, but I think that
Sure.
that's it. Like that was it, and this is all for nothing. Consciousness to me is so fucked up, right? Like life
Yes.
is so it's fucked up, right?
Yeah.
But it's also very beautiful at the same time. So it's like to me, there has to be something. There has to be meaning. There's no way that we got all of this, we got this far just because it roll of the dice, right?
Well,
So what do you
here's
think?
there's two there's two pieces of it. On one hand, there is um the tangible how. There's the how does life happen? How is their consciousness? How does it work? Where did it come from? What
Yeah.
keeps it? What is the life force? There's that stuff, which really my answer to that is I don't fucking know. that I just don't know. I will never know. I know that I'll never know, and I have to just come to accept that. And believe me, I'm a very curious person. I've spent countless hours, sober and stoned, thinking about this on every level, you know, um, and I will continue to do so for all my days. I find it fascinating to think and talk about. But then the other aspect of it is um, the why. What is the reason? What is the purpose?
Mhm.
There's how are we here, and then there's why are we here. And what I really believe is the why part. What is our purpose? What is our mission? All of that. And my simple answer for that is there is no reason. I really
Uh-huh.
just believe there is no reason. I love space shit. I
Yeah.
love looking at space, learning about space. I'll watch documentaries and nature films and all of that. When Elon Musk launches a rocket, I have to watch it, you know. And I watch any of these educational little films about outer space, any given topic, I don't care. It's fascinating to me. And sometimes I run into one of these um, you know, shows or documentaries or whatever it might be that really illustrates the scale of the known universe. And so even that term, we have a term, the known universe. By claiming the known universe, what we're already acknowledging is the fact that there is the unknown universe. And the scale of just the known universe is so just outrageous and unfathomable in scale to it's hard to get your mind around, really. We look at objects every day. We look at how big, what a big piece of land you live on. Think about your state, and then zoom out a little farther. Think about
Yeah.
the tremendous fucking size of the United States.
Yeah.
How long would it take you to walk from here to the other side? It's tremendous. And then zoom out just a little further and look at the size of North America altogether, or even farther, the whole planet Earth. It's shocking. How long would it take you to walk around it? It's
Yeah.
tremendous. And of course, we know that we're just one ball floating in our solar system, right? The sun is how many times bigger than the earth? I forget, but a shitload bigger than
Yeah.
the earth, so many times bigger. And that's our little solar system. And that's one part of the galaxy. And then you zoom out and zoom out and zoom out. And our whole fucking galaxy is a speck in relation to the size of the rest of it. And I remember, not long ago, just a couple months ago, I watched one of these things where they kept zooming out. and zooming
Yeah.
out and zooming out and seeing that our solar system and our planet even is this tiny little dot amongst these other countless other little dots. It's so insignificant. And here we are down here on one of these microscopic little dots, basically living our lives. And everything we do, all of our experiences feel so important, right?
Yeah.
You know, at some point in time, every one of us is going to lose someone or
Yeah.
everyone that we love. And it is devastating on a personal level. And, that person lived, if they're lucky, if they're really lucky, a person lives for 90 years,
Hmm.
the oldest living person ever was what, 100 and something years old, 115 years old, maybe. That's about, if you're a real anomaly, you could dream to witness 115 years on life.
Hmm.
And in the scope of anything, how long is 115 years? It's meaningless. You've witnessed nothing in the grand scheme of things, you know?
Hmm.
No one was able to witness all the different things that the earth has looked like over the years, the ice age, the dinosaurs. We'll never know. And one day when we're gone, and we will be gone, there will be more after us. There'll be something else. Or for a long time, maybe there will be nothing else. And all of this is happening on who knows how many other little dots that are floating out there. And so, why? Why are we the little thing that's been walking around on this one little dot for this little tiny period of time? I have no fucking idea. Why are there ants under my feet? I've
Yeah.
murdered so many animals without even knowing it.
Yeah.
You know, I have no idea. And at some point, something's going to come along and murder all of us. It might
Yeah.
be another asteroid, which, what's a fucking asteroid? To us, it's a cataclysmic, species ending event.
Yeah.
It's tremendous. It means everything to us, but it means nothing to the rest of the universe. The rest of the universe won't even notice that it happened.
Uh-huh.
And so when I spend some time thinking about all of this, I realize, or I come to the conclusion that in the grand scheme of things, we're insignificant.
Uh-huh.
And our meaning and our motivations in life have to come from us. We've
Yes.
got this amount of time, and it's going to mean what we make it mean. We're going to fall in love. We're going to find music that we love and food that we love and experiences that we love and things that give meaning to our otherwise void of meaning existence. And so it's all very egocentric. We're just here to, I don't know, you wake up one day and you're here, you're alive. You're a baby, you don't know what the fuck's going on, and then you're a kid and you kind of know what's going on.
Yeah.
You're old enough to realize what's going on. What is
Yeah.
this? I'm in this house and I have to learn a language and go to work, and you
Yeah.
figure it out. But it's all leading to the same place. It's just nothingness here. And what happens when we die? Probably nothing. Probably.
Okay.
I don't know. I've never been dead. Maybe. Unless I
Yeah.
have. Unless I'm wrong, and I reserve the right to be wrong. I don't
Uh-huh.
know. But it's my suspicion that when we die, nothing happens.
Very, very well put. I like it.
Thanks. I regret that I'm not stoned right now, because if I were stoned, boy, I could give you a wild answer.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Do we want to keep on with some of these tenets?
Yes, yes. I was gonna ask you some other
Sure, go
questions
ahead.
about it, but no, you pretty much answered them. So
Okay,
that's why so okay, let me ask you this then. Okay.
sure.
If what do you think deja vu is?
Oh, I would, it's funny you say that. And I wonder where you got that question from. But on my wall in my little
Uh-huh.
project studio in my basement
Okay.
is a thing from Timothy Leary. Are you familiar
Yeah.
with him?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So he's got this sort of well known I think sometimes it's referred to as his call to arms or something like that. And I don't have it all memorized, but he asks, he talks about the idea of strangers meeting and speaking with each other and asking, off the bat, asking all the deep questions, things like what makes you cry and what do you think deja vu is for?
Hmm.
And it's funny when you word it like that. What is deja vu for? Not
Yeah.
just what is deja vu, but what is it for? Meaning, the assumption with that wording is that it does serve a purpose. Um, and I'm certainly not saying that it does. I have no idea what it is. And I love that it exists simply because we get to then sit here and ponder things like, what the fuck is deja vu?
Mhm.
And I know that we'll never have the answer. And that's more fun than knowing the answer.
Yeah, it gives it gives life meaning, you know?
Yeah, it adds mystery to the whole thing. And who doesn't love a good mystery?
And that's what life is all about. It is a mystery. I watched did you watch Dune? Did you go to the
I
Dune
haven't watched
premiere?
it yet. I have not
Oh,
yet.
all right, I won't say anything, but I went and watched Dune and there's a quote in that movie and it's actually pretty good. It says life's mission is not to be solved. It's in the reality to be experienced. And I think that's very true. Like I love talking about these things and it's what my podcast is all about is what is what, why is there why, you know, where do thoughts come from, why do we think a thought to think a thought, right?
Yeah.
But in the grand scheme of it all, it is just of life is just to live in the moment, be present, witness reality, witness consciousness as it is right now, because the past is over and the future doesn't exist. I like when you say one day you just wake up and you're like, what the fuck? What is
Yeah.
this? Where am I?
Yeah.
Who am I? You know? Um,
Yeah. You just appear in the world and now you have to deal with it.
so one question that just came to mind when it comes to the I don't know if this is the right term, but the nihilistic viewpoint of there's just nothing after life and there's no point of it all is try to how would you if there's nothing after death, what is nothing? What is nothing like to be experienced?
Yeah, I mean, these are all the great stoner questions, right?
Yeah,
Like,
I think the more
um
appropriate term would be psychedelic because you know
sure.
you say that one day you wake up, you know, and one day for me, I'm sure for you, you take psychedelics and you're like, what the fuck, you know?
Yeah, well, I mentioned earlier I'm 43 years old
Yeah.
and I was straight edge up until I was 37. I had never experienced any substances whatsoever.
Mhm.
And I never planned on it. I was going to be sober for
Which
my whole
is
life.
which is another very powerful point you bring up because a lot the stigma of Satanism is I love how you said Black Sabbath too, is you listen to fucking Black Sabbath and you snort heroin through your
Yes.
dick.
Right,
It's like
right.
that's not it.
Yeah, I just want to point out I mentioned Black Sabbath, and almost every time I talk, I mention Black Sabbath. I don't know. But just the other night, it was a night or two ago, I was sitting in my backyard around a fire pit, surrounded by a group of Satanists. So this is a familiar picture in many people's minds, right? Satanists in the dark at night
Yeah.
surrounding a fire. All right. I had my little Bluetooth speaker out there. We were chatting around the fire, and I was listening to Sade. I was listening to Sade, some
Yeah.
nice romantic smooth jazz as we all were chatting. So, yeah, yeah, a lot of us love Black Sabbath and heavy metal and horror movies, and I love a
Mhm.
bit of that stuff myself, certainly Black Sabbath. But it's definitely not the complete picture. We come from every possible background imaginable. We come from every corner of the world and experience and culture. And we have people, even in my little group. My group is a group of like 400 people. And just in that tiny little slice of 400 people, we have so many different lived experiences with us. Every gender and sexuality and people from different parts of the world. And it's just so, there's so much there. There isn't a cookie cutter experience. Now, there are parts of that that lots of us have in common, for sure. And the one thing that is very common that we talk about all the time amongst ourselves in Satanism is the idea of being the outsider. And, there's a million different ways that a person can be led to feel like the outsider,
Hmm.
but they do. And that end result is similar for everyone. And so at a certain point, people do start to look around. You get to a point of feeling like the outsider, and there are some people that want to exist in a more solitary way. But I think it's natural for most people to seek out some form of community. Where are my people? There's got to be people like me. Where are the like minded? Who else has felt this way or experienced this? I want to talk about it.
Yeah.
And so, even though we have all these diverse experiences, if nothing else, we can relate to one another on a level like that. I've experienced being the outsider too. Why did you feel like that? What made you feel like that? I can relate. And now you don't have to feel like the outsider anymore because you've found your people.
Hmm.
And there's an understanding that comes from people that have lived. And I think the longer you've lived with that feeling, the more potent it is. If you've gone 25 years feeling like the outsider and struggling and feeling the frustration of that, then that becomes really ingrained in who you are and the way you relate to the world. And for some of us, it becomes a really big deal when people find this group and find that community where they can open up and talk about whatever they want to talk about. And they can talk about the experiences they had with their family and in the church when they were growing up and with partners or whatever it is. We can share all these different parts of ourselves that previously were taboo, or you just didn't have a place where you felt comfortable expressing it. And now you do. And for some people, that's a really profound discovery to make in their own lives.
Very true. That is something that I am currently going through because I live in Dunk, small town Idaho, and it's like, man,
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
people are so close-minded. Not all of them, not everyone that lives here, but I'm an artist that likes dark things and very consciously aware. And a small town is like, fuck, man, I'm lonely out here, you know.
Yeah. For
So let's
sure.
get let's get back to the tenants. Let's get back to the
Sure.
tenants. I think we're on the sixth one, right?
Yes. Tenet number 6 is people are fallible. If one makes a mistake, one should do one's best to rectify it and resolve any harm that might have been caused.
Okay,
And
explain.
that one is pretty simple, right? People are fallible.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
guaranteed 100% you are going to fuck up.
Yes.
And we're not going to pretend that we're not. We're not going to brush it under the rug. I fucked up. I'm sorry. How can I help to make this better? How can I
Hmm.
rectify this? Can I do that? Can I be forgiven? Let's be real about it. Let's get it out in the open. Let's do our best to resolve any harm that might have been caused. Because again, we way back to the first tenet, we are aspiring to um, lead with compassion and empathy.
Hmm.
But all these, I always say that the tenets work together in tandem. You're not really to pick and choose. Well, I believe in number 2 and 3 and 4, but not the
Yeah.
others. They kind of are a package deal, and it all
Hmm.
adds up to don't be a dick, right?
Yeah.
Try your best, you know. And these are the moral guidelines that feel important to us. And they might not work for everyone, but for us, these are ideas that are meaningful and important and a helpful reminder if your goal is to live in a certain way.
Yeah.
And just a natural reminder, an important part of it is yeah, we're fallible. And so let's be aware of that and not have unrealistic expectations. Um, And when we do, let's do our best to fix it.
Yeah, it's more like, to me at least, it's more like we're all the same. We're all human. And as humans, we're fucked up, we're unreliable, we suck, you know. But we're also very good. We do great things, and we're nice and we're kind and we have compassion. It's just we're all the same underneath. Whether you're a Christian or a Satanist, you're still gonna cry at Marley and Me because that movie is fucked up. We're all the same underneath.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So about
Um,
the last final one.
the last one, this one to me is sort of a summary that wraps them all up. This one is: every tenet is a guiding principle designed to inspire nobility in action and thought. The spirit of compassion, wisdom, and justice should always prevail over the written or spoken word.
Okay, that's a lot. Please describe.
Yeah, to me, like I said, that one it just sort of summarizes the ideals put forth in all of the tenets. It just
Yeah.
reminds us that these tenets are, a guiding principle, and they are meant to inspire nobility in action and thought.
Mm-hmm.
They're there to be a reminder to you of what's important in the world. And if you view these tenets as a positive thing, then these are there in print for you to remind yourself of and to help guide you um, to staying on the path that you've chosen, which is just the path of these ideals. If you value these ideals, then that's what you want to do. You want to be compassionate. You want to value science. You want to respect one's bodily autonomy and freedom. All of those things. And so that seventh tenet is just sort of, to me, it's just a nice summary to remind you of the purpose of the seven tenets and the purpose they serve.
I like it. I like it. Well, we got through it all. Um,
There they are.
there they are. Take that as you will, as whatever you want to believe. There's another belief for you. I don't know.
Yeah, we
uh,
just we have a great, and our group, I've mentioned, there is the Satanic Temple, which is the big international organization
uh,
who introduced these tenets to the world. And so I mentioned my group a few times. I have a small congregation of, like I said, about 400 people right now.
it's pretty big.
And I mean, yeah, relative. It's all
Mhm.
relative, I guess. But yeah, I mean, it's been growing steadily, which is great. More and more people are finding it and finding value in it, which is cool. Um, but it's 400 people in the grand scheme of things. That's just a tiny little group, right?
Yeah.
And we've I think the primary purpose that we've come to serve is that aspect of community that we talked about earlier. That's such an important thing. And when I started the group, I had no expectations. I didn't know what it was going to be. I didn't even necessarily have an idea of what I wanted it to be. I was just sort of winging it and seeing, well, let me see who I can find. Who else is down with this? Let me see. And as it's grown and we've spent more time with each other and getting to know each other and everything, that community aspect has become the most valuable thing.
Yeah.
We use our membership numbers for things like charity initiatives that we do. We've had several charitable campaigns that we've pulled off so far, and we also use it for fun things. We have fun events that we do. We're just about to have a great masquerade ball that we've been planning, and we have things like that all the time. But the number one thing has been the community aspect. And I think that's been really valuable for me and for a lot of the other members as well. Um, and I just never could have anticipated that it would turn into what it is now. And that's just been really exciting.
Yeah, man. I love that. That's what we all need as human, is a family, a community, to be a part of something bigger than us. How can someone, you know, find, I don't, I've got I can put it in the description, right? But how can someone
Sure.
find you and join the community and be a part of your
Um,
group?
yeah. So there's a couple. I do a podcast. It is called Hail Satan, and you can find that on every podcast platform, pretty much, I think. You can go to the website at hailsatanpodcast.com. And the congregation that I mentioned, we are called Satanic Delco. And you can visit satanicdelco.com if you'd like to. That's DELCO, satanicdelco.com.
It's a pretty cool name. Where'd you come up with that?
Delco is the county we live in. We live in Delaware County, Pennsylvania,
Oh,
and it's just called Delco.
just
And
no
we're
cool meaning behind it or anything.
nope, nothing at all. It was just it started as a geographically limited thing. We're just outside of Philadelphia,
Uh-huh.
and I just live in Delaware County, and so I was just throwing it out there to see who can I find in Delaware County. But of course, membership is open to anyone anywhere in the world. So now we have members from everywhere. We have members from Australia and Mexico and the UK and Canada, all over the place.
That's pretty cool. I got one less. I have one last question. You can ask as many as you want or talk about anything as you want.
Sure.
But my last question is: have you ever experienced any demons or any ghost stories, right? Any or alien stories? Are you right?
I have not.
Uh-huh.
I wish I would, you know. Um, I was mentioning earlier, yeah, I was 37. I was sober up until age 37. I was totally straight edge. And then I started using cannabis and organic psychedelics, which to me means mushrooms and DMT.
Uh-huh.
So all of the substances I've ever used are cannabis, mushrooms, and DMT. I don't drink alcohol and I've never tried LSD or anything else. Um, and when I started using the psychedelics in particular, especially DMT, they really, I don't know, broadened my sphere of, uh, how do I even put it? Just sort of thought and perception. The things that I thought about got a little bigger,
Mm-hmm.
and just the scope grew a bit, um, based on the experiences that I had using those substances. And it's been incredibly positive. I would not take it back. I think the way that I did it sort of later in life with a little bit of forethought or intention really went a
Yeah.
long way. And so I'm pretty cool with that. And I think they really changed me as a person in positive ways. So I've never experienced anything like aliens or ghosts or that type of stuff, but I've had, you know, otherworldly experiences.
Yeah, man. Like, have you ever yeah, I've never done DMT, but like obviously like I know about it. So you're like the DMT spirits, right? The extraterrestrial
Yeah, the
dimensional
the
beings.
entities.
Yeah.
Yeah, the entities that people refer to. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been there. I've been with them.
How
I
was it?
have experienced that. And it's hard, when you try to describe psychedelic experiences, you just you're
You
just
don't.
chasing your tail,
Yeah.
there are no words. But I found it just intensely interesting and hard to explain. And I've had a bunch of experiences that I will never forget.
Yeah.
And I have found meaning in some of them. I've been able to sort of pull things, they're a lot of it's very intangible. It's hard to describe to someone else. It's sort of a feeling that you're left with. um but yeah, I've experienced wild things that I never would have imagined to be possible
Have you ever
otherwise.
seen Satan while doing
No,
DMT?
no, I never
No.
have. It never really crossed my mind, actually. But
Uh-huh.
maybe now that the seed has been planted, maybe one of these
Right?
times I will.
Because I've heard people say they've seen Satan. Um,
Yeah, I mean,
it's
I've heard people describe every wild fucking thing.
yeah. Like I
Yeah.
said, I've never done it, so I don't know. But a lot of people I talk to, when they do it, they like change their whole perspective the afterlife, and they believe like, shit goes down on the afterlife. So it's interesting that you don't necessarily believe anything afterlife. You just don't know, obviously. I'm
Yeah. Yes. You know, I've had people ask me that specifically, even Satanists. I've had some people I know that are Satanists
Mhm.
ask me that um, after some of these psychedelic experiences, did I ever question my atheism? Um, and I never have.
Mhm.
But I've definitely had my mind blown. That's for
Uh-huh.
sure. And that's honestly, that's a reason why I turned to using cannabis and psychedelics in the first place. Um, I was looking for I was looking for the extraordinary. I was a little I was in a place where life seemed really mundane in a sort of depressing way.
Yeah.
And every day was just feeling like, you know, I've been here, I've done this. It's not exciting. I'm over it. Like I'm not finding joy and excitement in my everyday. And that is something that psychedelics and even cannabis to a good degree reintroduced into my life, a sense of wonder. Um, I often will ask, I'll ask groups of friends or whatever, when is the last time that you've been genuinely astonished? When's the
Yeah.
last time you can say you felt astonished? Your mind was so blown, jaw left hanging open in fucking amazement in a positive way. And for most people, they can't even remember such a time. It probably happened in childhood because after that, you become accustomed to and desensitized to the world. You can hear an amazing song or view an amazing work of art that took someone months or years to complete. And it looks cool. And you might think it looks cool, but that's about the extent of it. Wow, that's really beautiful. That might be, you know, you might get that kind of reaction. Um, but do your eyes bug out and does your jaw hang open because you can't believe how amazing this is? Like, really, deep in yourself, you are exploding over how excited and bewildered you are by this fascinating thing. My life was lacking that the way most people's lives are lacking that. And I really wanted it. And psychedelics introduced not only did they introduce that actual feeling and experience because I've had that many times and that's amazing, but I was also reinvigorated a bit by just the knowledge that they exist.
Yeah.
Like I'm not on mushrooms right now, but when I take a minute to think about, you mean somebody could just like cultivate some spores out of thin air in their room or whatever, and it'll grow a mushroom. And when you eat it, real life fucking magic happens. Like that sounds like I'm describing a fairy tale story.
Yeah, man.
Like somebody grew a mushroom and they ate it and everything became beautiful and awesome. This sounds like some Alice in Wonderland type of shit, but it's real life. And just the idea of knowing that that actually exists in real life, in the real world, that's sort of uplifting to me. Just knowing that that's real. That makes the idea of life on Earth a little bit cooler than it would be if that didn't exist.
Yeah, totally. It adds color to the black and white painting. You
Yeah,
know, that
a whole lot of color.
yeah, I
And it's
love,
like living, moving, breathing color.
right? No,
Yeah.
totally, dude. So how do you, because I think that the you mentioned the boring mundaneness of life. How do you get over that without psychedelics? How do you destroy the boring mundaneness of existence? Because I saw a really great video that describes it. It's like when you, after you turn 18, nothing become, unless, you go do whatever. But for a lot of people, they get stuck in the 9 to 5 grind.
Yes.
How, and every day's the same. Every day, everything's the same. Every day's the same. And then 40 years go by, and then, fuck, dude, what happened? How do you not do that?
I mean, it is obviously for most people, it is simply a mental barrier
Hmm.
more than anything else. Now, of course, reality is a thing. Life circumstances intervene, and the road is a lot harder for some of us than others. Um, but it's just a conscious choice. So many people, I've made music. I've played in bands my whole life since I was a kid. I'm really into music. And so I always participated in things like that. I had rock bands and stuff with my friends. And, we kept playing in bands. And as you get older, some of these guys, they stop doing it. And I talked to them, and, some of them, I know a couple, I've got a couple in mind. They're these really good musicians. I'd say great musicians, and their whole life was about playing guitar or doing this or that and being creative, and they found a lot of joy in it. Their identity almost centered around it. And they got older, of course, and they get that job, and they met that girlfriend who loved that they played guitar. They thought it made them so cool, and they were sexy. You're so cool, you're so sexy, you play guitar. I love when you're on stage. I love watching you doing what you love. And then a couple years go by, and somebody had a baby. Fuck, now we have two babies. We got to make sure we work a lot because we have to do it. And there's less time in the day for your passions. And now you want to go to band practice, and your spouse reminds you, "Oh, you're going out to play with your friends again? We've got a sink full of dishes. We've got this kid needs to do his homework. Who is going to vacuum this rug?" you know, and that person who used to be so turned on by your pursuing your passion, now your passion is in the way of practical things. And look, this is all real life, but these are also choices that we make. And it's not always easy, but you do have to make the effort if you want it. If you want it, you've got to make the effort to find room for passion, whatever your passion is. If it's making something, reading something, listening to music, time to yourself is really valuable, and maintaining your own identity is really valuable. Couples and people building families and all of that, they have a tendency to allow um, the group or the family or whatever that bit is to sort of overtake their individual identity, and they lose valuable parts of themselves. And I think it's just a careful balance that you have to strike. You have to be willing to face fears. You have to willing to take risks sometimes, and just make it a priority to pursue your passions. And like I mentioned earlier, that the psychedelics and all that changed my life. They changed me as a person to the extent that I usually refer to like the two halves of the two parts of my life. There is pre psychedelics me and post psychedelics me, and they're not the same guy. One of my favorite pastimes that I can hardly stop talking about is skydiving. I love skydiving,
No fucking way, dude.
and I do it as often as I can.
Yeah.
I have my second license in skydiving. I'm not like an advanced skydiver. I'm a pretty basic fucking skydiver, but I'm a skydiver. And that's awesome. Like from the
Yeah,
outside,
man.
when
Holy
I'm
shit.
there, when I'm in the plane skydiving, and I've done it a bunch of times. When I'm in the plane skydiving, I still sit there and look out the window or close my eyes and think to myself, what an extraordinary thing I get to do. Look at this. Look at us in this fucking plane. We are miles above the ground, and we are definitely about to throw ourselves out of this fucking plane. And there's so many feelings and emotions that go along with that. I'm fucking terrified. I'm nervous. I got the butterfly feeling in your stomach as you're going there sometimes. I'm excited. I can't believe the beauty that I experience sometimes while I'm doing it. It's a view that you can't imagine from any other activity, you know?
Yeah.
And I know that on a level, look, I'm a skydiver and I know that skydiving as an activity is pretty fucking safe. You know, it sounds crazy, you're going to fall out of a plane, but it's pretty safe. You know, there's a very good safety record. The equipment is very advanced. We know what we're doing. But is it a risk? Absolutely. It is a risk. Um, but the reward is tremendous. It's tremendous. Um, so yeah, on a level, we are tempting fate, one might say, or we're risking our very lives. Um, but man, the feeling. And before psychedelics, I definitely said I would never skydive. I would never do that. Why would I do that? That's stupid. I'm going to take all that risk my very life for a few moments of what, fun? And that was my mindset. And I was fucking terrified. Let's not forget that the main reason people don't skydive is because they're terrified. They can make up a lot of excuses as to why they can't do it or they haven't done it or they're going to do it one day, one day. That's when everybody's going to do something cool, right? They're going to do it one day. But most of us die long before we ever get to do those things. That day never comes. And so my suggestion to everybody would be to add a sense of urgency. You know, assume you're going to die tomorrow. Assume you're going to die next week. You know, you're going to die because you are going to die and you don't get to know when. You don't usually get to know when or how or anything like that. So all your plans and your procrastination, they're not making you happy. So I would say a little more doing and a little less waiting would be healthy for everyone.
That was beautiful. I'm
Thanks.
tearing up right now.
Thank you.
No, but that is so true. That is that all I am that person. I will never fucking skydive. I'm
Yeah.
really not that person. I do try to face my fears. You know, I do and I don't. They're like, like I mentioned earlier, oh, I hate my town. I want to move, but it's like that's pretty scary. Granted, like I don't know where I want to move to, but it's like even just the thought of moving to like a city is like that's terrifying.
Yeah.
But everything you said is so true because you don't know when you die. I could die. I just died, right? I literally just died because a
Yeah.
meteor, because my phone right here in front of me just blew up in my face. You don't
Yeah.
know when you die. It just happens. And the whole point of life and the whole point of life is going out of your comfort zone, is taking risk, is doing everything you wanted to do and not worrying about the stuff that is bullshit, like politics, religion. That stuff, to me, at least to me, it's maybe I shouldn't have said politics, but what is Kim Kardashian doing? Does God love me? Like, that's all bullshit. The things that matter is what you want to do, what your life is going to be, right? If you want to go skydiving, then go skydive. If you want to be an artist, then be an artist because you can die right now. You never know when you're going to die. Uh, and that's why, childhood and high school seems to last forever, is because you're always taking risk. You're always out of your comfort zone. You're always learning. That's the big one, is you're always learning new things. But after high school, unless if you go off and do something, you know, you don't learn anything. You don't take any risks. You don't go out of your comfort zone. You work at Denny's and you wait tables until you become the manager. And, like you said, one day you wake up and you have kids and you're like, no, one day you wake up and you're like, what the fuck am I doing? You know?
Yeah.
And,
Yeah,
you know,
it's scary. It's depressing. I see a lot of people that are just
it's
sort of
depressing.
skating by. You know, they're just waiting. It feels like they're just waiting. They're just doing the thing until it's over.
Yeah,
And I
man.
don't I don't know, man. That bums me out. I can't do it.
I love that you said, um, one day never comes, because it does. You know, everyone I know always says, and me always says, one day I'll
Yeah.
do it. Like that's when I started. Like, it's interesting you bringing that up because, like, with my doing my podcast, granted, as I've started to do this, I realized this isn't like my main passion. Art's really my main passion.
Sure.
But just for example, is, I was saying that it's like, oh man, one day I'm gonna do my podcast and it's gonna be great one day. And then, I think I've shared this story before. So it's kind of just like I was talking to somebody and he had the same idea as I did. And I'm just like, well, fuck, he's doing it. Why am I not doing it? Why am I just waiting for one day to do it? Um, I just relate to that very much. I like the I another thing is I have a friend that was going through some relationship advice or going through some needed some relationship advice, and he kept telling me, like, every time he'd come up to me, he kept saying, oh man, next time when she says this, next time I'm really gonna do it, I'm really gonna break up with her next time, I swear.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, you've been saying this for 2 months. What are you
Yeah.
doing?
Yeah, wait, man, I'll bring this whole thing full circle. We talked about Black Sabbath and how I'm obsessed with Black Sabbath because I
Yeah,
am. I
man.
do. I harass my friends every minute with Black Sabbath and Ronnie James Dio. And the wise words of Ronnie James Dio in a Black Sabbath song called Die Young. He says, "So live for today, tomorrow never comes." And every time I hear him sing those words, it feels profound to me, and I let it be a reminder to
Yeah,
myself.
man. That's true. Tomorrow never comes. It's always just today. Yesterday is over. It's always just today, present moment. The
Yeah.
quote I love, and I know you'll know this one, right? The one I think of, what's is exactly just that, is Pink Floyd song Time, where he goes like,
Oh yeah.
Waiting around in your hometown, waiting for something or someone to show you the way." And it's like, that's so true. We always, especially if you're striving for more, as an artist, I can say this with full confidence. I sit around, wait around, waiting for someone to come and take me away. Be like,
Yeah.
walk into my house, right, my apartment where I do art, and they walk in and they're like, holy shit, you're a great artist, how about you, I'll give you $1 million for that painting and you can blah, blah, blah. It's like, that's never gonna happen.
Yeah.
If I can, whenever I give advice to people, I can only use myself as an example. I can't pretend like I'm someone I'm not. So I do live in small town Pudunk, Idaho, and it's like, I'm never going to become an artist if I stay here. It's just a fucking fact. I'm never going to become a true artist if I stay in small town Pudunk, Idaho. And if you want to be, I have a coworker who wants to be a comedian. And I'm like, oh, really? Let me see some of the stuff you write. And he's like, oh, I don't have anything wrote down. It's on my head. And it's like,
Right.
what? No, what?
Yeah.
What do you
And
mean?
either he doesn't have any of it written down, or he isn't confident enough about it to share it with anyone yet.
Exactly
And
that.
that confidence may come or it may never come.
Exactly.
It's a matter of, well, eventually you've got to just grab it and do it. That's it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, I think that's a beautiful ending point. I always ask if anyone has any advice. I think you laid it down. You
Yeah.
laid it down
That's a
pretty thick.
Yeah, that's all
Uh,
of it.
is there
My
anything
real
else?
advice would be,
Uh-huh.
everyone, you should listen to Black Sabbath.
Black Sabbath. I just listened to Ozzy Osbourne's audiobook
Oh,
uh
nice.
from like 2009 or 2009, I think, is when he released it. So obviously it's not very current,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah,
don't
those
know.
are go listen to those first bunch of Sabbath albums, and including the Dio era. That's what
Yeah,
I
man.
advise everyone to do.
Yeah, man. Totally. I love Black Sabbath. Or I love music. Music really inspires me when I create art, Uh
Yeah,
that's just a fact. I don't know. I just wanted to throw that out there.
for
Is
sure.
there anything else you'd like to talk about or share or
That's it.
thingy?
Yeah, the podcast and my group have pretty much become a full-time thing for me. So that's on any given day, that's pretty much what I'm busy doing.
Rock on, man. Maybe just plug your stuff one more time. Plug it so everyone knows
Sure.
to
The
check it out.
podcast, the podcast is Hail Satan, and you can find it at hailsatanpodcast.com. And our congregation, if you're interested in our Satanism, is satanicdelco.com.
Rock on. Well, Joseph, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.